Game ain't over. The sun is shining. And it ain't over.
You wanted the best, you got the best from my home studio on Long Island, New York. Welcome to Ian Scotto Rocks. I am your host, Ian Scotto. You wanted the best, you got the best is, of course, an homage to Kiss. And you guys really loved my deep dive into Mark St. John, the forgotten member of Kiss. So I figured let's do a video on Vinnie Vincent, specifically the years that Vinnie Vincent just went missing and disappeared. So let's get into it. Vincent Cusano, or Vinnie Vincent, is best known for his extremely short but very notable tenure in the band Kiss, replacing the great Ace Frehley on guitar. Although he wasn't around for long, his contributions to the band are extremely notable, co-writing some of the most classic Kiss tracks, including I Love It Loud, Lick It Up, Unholy, and I Just Wanna. He also co-wrote some less universally known fan favorites like I Still Love You, Exciter, and A Million to One. Vinnie taking issue with contractual issues, not gelling with the band, and just being an overall nuisance, according to other members, led to his early departure. Pretty shortly after, Vinnie would resurface with his own band, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, releasing 2 albums, self-titled and All Systems Go. On this video, we're going to focus on Vinnie's disappearance, but if you're interested in learning more about that era of Vinnie's career, I would highly suggest picking up the book The Boy Is Gonna Rock by the band's drummer, Bobby Rock. So this was a great book that I picked up when it was released, and unlike a lot of other rock autobiographies, Bobby didn't use a ghostwriter. There was no co-writer because Bobby has actually written a number of other books. He is an author along with being an incredible drummer. So many great stories of the Vinnie Vincent Invasion era from that book. One that stands out to me that is just absolutely insane is that while they were recording those albums, Vinnie Vincent wanted to use a drum machine. He wanted to use programmed drums, which were kind of in their infancy at that time. It wasn't as prominent, but the record label wanted him to use a drummer, and Bobby Rock was the band's drummer. And I guess as a happy medium, which isn't really happy or reasonable, he decided to have Bobby Rock play on the tracks, and then he would play back the tracks in the recording studio with a metronome. And even if to the ear, without the metronome, everything sounded great, if it didn't exactly hit that spot of the metronome, Vinnie would insist that Bobby go back and record the entire thing all over again until it was perfectly on beat with the metronome. So Bobby Rock, who's an incredible drummer, really wasn't able to be as inventive as he would have liked to have because he was really caged by this crazy metronome thing. Anyway, great book. Pick it up. Much like Vinnie being viewed as a nuisance by members of Kiss, it seems like he was also a nuisance to members of his own band, along with the band's label, Chrysalis Records. So much so that Dana Strum and Mark Slaughter from the Invasion would depart and form their own band, Slaughter, which Chrysalis gladly picked up, dropped Vinnie, and their debut album, Stick It To You, would go on to much greater commercial success than anything put out under the Vinnie Vincent moniker. The album's second track, Burnin' Bridges, is actually believed to be a diss to Vinnie with lines like, shooting everybody down thinking you're so profound, you never listen to no one's advice. Vinnie would then write for some outside artists, the most notable of these being the Bangles. But not much else was going on for him in the public eye from the late 80s into the early 90s until he would resurface to write on Kiss's Revenge album, released in 1992. Once again, Simmons and Stanley would claim to encounter all the same issues they originally dealt with nearly a decade prior during their time with Vinnie, and vowed to never work with him again in any capacity. Vinnie would sue Kiss several times throughout the 90s, and you used to be able to find some video from this time on the MTV News archives online, but all of these videos seem to have since vanished, unfortunately. He would lose every single one of these lawsuits, to my knowledge, and one in particular resulted in Vincent actually paying Kiss $81,000 in damages and legal expenses. That had to have hurt. As for putting out any new music, it wasn't until 1996 when Vinnie would resurface at various unofficial Kiss conventions throughout the country, doing panels, signing autographs for fans, and releasing his first EP of new material under the names of both the EP and Euphoria for different pressings. Euphoria was meant to be a sample of a future full-length release entitled Guitarmageddon, but it would never surface. At Kiss conventions, Vinnie would reportedly also take pre-orders for a cassette box set that never surfaced, charging fans between $120 and $300 each. He took the money and ran. I guess he knew Kiss fans were an easy mark for buying overpriced merchandise. During this time, Vinnie would split from his wife and the mother of his twin daughters, Anne-Marie Peters, and marry Diane Caro, later Diane Cusano, in 1996, who was ironically an ex-girlfriend of none other than Ace Frehley. In some of the old Kiss Expo footage you could find online, he actually introduces her to the crowd. Vinnie would also move out of LA and relocate to Nashville. In early 1998, Anne-Marie Peters, still going by Anne-Marie Cusano, living in Vinnie's home state of Connecticut at the time, would go missing. She was believed to only be working as a secretary, but when their mother never surfaced, Vincent's twin daughters would tip off police that their mother was also working as an escort. They didn't disclose this information to authorities at first, believing it would embarrass their mother if she was found alive. But this new piece of information would lead to finding her body 2 years later and arresting her murderer, Gregory Arthur. This must have been very hard for Vincent as well. In 2001, Vinnie would release the Vinnie Vincent Archives Volume 1. And unlike Euphoria, which I personally love, this album was basically a pile of crap. It was a 71-minute long, poorly recorded shredding guitar solo that goes absolutely nowhere, called Speedball Jam. That's the only track on the album. I was debating playing some of it for you guys watching, but I really think my viewer retention would be pretty bad if I played more than 10 seconds of this. I mean, if you're dying to listen, just go on YouTube, look it up, and don't say I didn't warn you. I mean, I'm a Vinnie fan, but this is just my honest opinion. He likely made these to sell at some Kiss expos, but those appearances never happened. Much like Slaughter wrote about in their song, he seemed to have burned too many bridges. Since Vinnie never came out of hiding for this release, 1999 would really mark the start of Vinnie's bizarre disappearance that would last for almost 20 years. Vinnie would move out of Nashville to Smyrna, Tennessee, and leave the spotlight altogether. His home with his wife Diane would be surrounded by an 8-foot-tall fence, signaling his disinterest in mingling with the outside world. In a 2014 piece for Rolling Stone about the same topic we're covering in this video, author Max Blau would interview Vinnie's neighbors and nearby business owners, and nearly everyone he interviewed could not recall ever meeting Vinnie or even recall seeing him out in public. He had become a total recluse. On May 22nd, 2011, the former Kiss guitarist would be arrested at his home for assault after his then-wife Diane Cusano would allege that Vincent roughed her up and dragged her body through shattered glass. Vinnie would refuse to leave his home, but once police got in, while searching his basement, they would come across sealed containers that held the bodies of 4 dead dogs. According to both Vincent and his wife, the couple rescued 20 dogs, and these smaller dogs in the Tupperware had been attacked and killed by their bigger and more aggressive dogs while out in their backyard. They intended to bury the pets, but had delayed it due to the poor weather. No charges were filed for this due to the explanation, but for the domestic abuse charges, Vinnie would be driven to jail where he would spend the night and be released on $10,000 bail the next morning. Vinnie has done some podcast appearances clearing all of this up and has always insisted he's an animal lover and It's just a very unfortunate thing that happened. Vinnie would surface now and again strictly online in forums and Facebook groups, and likely low on cash, he'd even create an authorized Double V fan forum, charging fans a modest $500 a year to have the privilege of connecting with him virtually. He'd even fleece fans over the years for items like a stage-used Creatures of the Night tour guitar pick for a whopping $1,000. As for his personal life at the time, things were not good. In 2014, at the age of 47, Vinnie's wife Diane would pass away from alcohol-related complications. Vinnie's Smyrna home would shortly after go up for sale, and when fans got word of this, many would explore the abandoned residence. I found this to be in very poor taste, but since it's already out there, many of these Kiss Army fanatics would take pictures which got posted to online forums and metal news websites, and the place was an absolute mess, to put it lightly. We do know that Vinnie would continue to live in the Nashville area up until now. Look, if this story we're discussing now was a member of any other band, he'd be long forgotten, quite honestly. But Kiss fans are a different breed, and the curiosity of what this man was up to really never died. Year after year, Kiss fans yearned to know, where's Vinnie Vincent? And apparently a lot of them were even still willing to buy whatever he'd sporadically decide to put up for sale online as a mega collectible every few years. Hey, speaking of buying things online, available now on the Etsy store, link in description. It wasn't until January 20th of 2018, 7 years back, when Vinnie would finally make his first public appearance in nearly 20 years at the Atlanta Kiss Expo. This first public appearance would be just as strange as you'd likely expect. I remember Vinnie being scheduled to appear on Trunk Nation with Eddie Trunk for his first interview in 2 decades, but instead of showing up for his allotted time slot, he would finally go on with Eddie with only 15 minutes left in the show. Yeah, I remember listening to this live. Eddie's show is 2 hours long, so for an hour and 45 minutes, it was just Eddie being like, well, Vinny's supposed to be here. I don't know where he is, and it was very awkward. Vinnie made it very awkward. On the interview, he would notably refer to Paul Stanley as Mean Mr. Mustard. At the Expo itself, he held a panel, performed with original VVI singer Robert Fleischman acoustically for a couple of songs, and apologized to fans who pre-ordered his box set, promising he'd make good on it, which he never has. He also discussed a future book in the works. 7 years later, that hasn't surfaced either. Vinnie will still do occasional appearances for fans in Nashville that are ridiculously priced, along with selling way overpriced merchandise that you can find on VinnieVincent.com, which includes items like a 2 t-shirt package selling for $350 and a re-release of Speedball Jam on CD also selling for $350, plus shipping. He also even made an appearance with Gene Simmons at his Nashville Vault appearance. That was pretty cool and extremely unexpected. He did an appearance where he also got up on stage with Ace Frehley and Bruce Kulick at an unofficial Kiss Expo called Creatures Fest, and it was mostly described as a total disaster. You can find some of that footage here on YouTube. Now look, I am actually a huge Vinnie Vincent fan when it comes to the music. I think the guy is a brilliant guitar player. Hell, if he ever tours, I'll probably even show up. It's just undeniable how bizarre he is, and I really haven't even scratched the surface. For example, there's even speculation that he's undergoing a sex change. Who knows? What I do know is that I still regularly blast everything from his material with Kiss to Vinnie Vincent Invasion's 2 albums and the Euphoria EP, which I even own a hard copy of, and that's hard to come by now. His contributions to Kiss are undeniable. Prior to him joining, there were a number of years where Kiss lost their identity and were fading into obscurity. People were barely showing up to shows. His songwriting and virtuoso-level guitar playing brought them back from the dead. And if he wasn't so good, there's no way Kiss would have given him a second chance back in 1992. But they did. And he delivered again. With that said, let's be honest here. he is certainly a character. Now, if you liked this episode, I really appreciate it. Subscribe, check out the merch store, like the video, and I did a great deep dive on Mark St. John, the forgotten member of KISS, which many of you loved. If you haven't gotten a chance to check that out yet, click right here for Mark St. John, the forgotten member of KISS. I really loved making that one, just like I loved making this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it.